Hey UMass fans, Alan Pandiani here for our next installment of the Flagship in Focus. And today we are joined by a very special guest, Dr. Pierre Rouzier, who many of you may have seen gracing the sidelines at McGurk Stadium, to the baselines at the Mullins Center, to sort of that northwest corner area at the Mullins Center for ice hockey. But Dr. Ruse, we're so excited to have you on here today to talk a little bit about your relationship with UMass athletics and some of the really inspiring things you're doing amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, in the delivery of some PPE to some of the local medical facilities, nursing homes, et cetera, et cetera. But before we dive into that, a lot of our fan base is just going to recognize you right off the bat, and they've seen you at games for a while now here at UMass. But if you could just tell us a bit of how you came to be at UMass and what you do day in and day out for our programs as our head physician.
So I've been here since 1997. At the time, I replaced a living legend, Dr. Jim Ralph, who had been here for over 30 years.
Wow.
So between Dr. Ralph and myself, they've had continuity in primary care sports for about 55 to 57 years. So, yeah, no, it's been great. My family has been a part of UMass. You know, you recognize my wife, Arlene, at all the events that we go to, and she boldly tells people that I'm a bigger sports fan than he is. So unlike some sports doctors who their jobs takes them away from their families, this has made our family even tighter.
Happy that you've been able to now formally introduce yourself to our fan base. You know, Doc Ruse, we're living in an unprecedented time right now amidst the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak. Talk a little bit about how your life has changed and some of the really key initiatives that you've been a part of on campus at UMass since this all started.
I got to tell you, the hardest thing for me is probably provider guilt. There are people who work in hospitals and ERs and ICUs, and they're in it. And doctors in offices, we're making phone calls and we're doing telemedicine and we're doing what we have to do, but I feel bad. I have trouble sleeping. I'm in the demographic with a medical problem that would make me a really bad person to get coronavirus. I'm 63, I've got asthma, and I'm on several medicines. So, the medical advice is don't get near it. Mm-hmm. So, you look to see what else can you do. We're making a lot of phone calls to patients, doing telemedicine. Today, via a telemed video app on my phone, I was able to look in someone's throat and look at their eye injury that they had with them holding up their phone in their mouth and at their eye to figure out what was going on with them. So it's a new world. A lot of people are doing what they can with the restrictions that we have right now. So part of the things which has been the best is a patient a few weeks ago emailed me to say, hey, there are people on campus helping out with the PPE, the personal protective equipment, and the shortage that's going around. How would you like to be involved? Which I really want to be involved. So got involved with a group of engineers, specifically Frank Supp and Megan Huber, under the direction of a faculty named Peter Reinhardt, who is the director of the Applied Life Sciences. And man, these people are thinking outside the box. They were trying to figure out how can we take materials that we can get, okay? And in this case was basically mylar plastic. And how can we cut it out of one sheet and make it so it's a protective face shield. Typical face shields are plastic from about here to here. There's a foam band, and then there's an elastic headband. But then you have to buy the elastic headband, which you can't buy elastic now. You got to get the foam. So it was like, okay, how do we, I don't know if you'll be able to see this. How can we get a sheet of plastic and figure out how one piece with a tail can fit into another piece and give you a shield that can go on like this
Right.
and protect you. So I got invited in as part of the feedback for the design, and then it had to be trialed by people. So I've got friends and colleagues that are emergency room physicians, pulmonologists, and so on. So I got it to them, and they gave me feedback. We made a couple design changes. Funny part, one of the local ER docs came over and met me. He put it on, and his head's a little bigger, and as soon as he put it on, a little tail ripped. We're like, oops, we need to make this bigger and stronger. So gave that feedback to the engineers, who took it from there.
It's been inspiring to see what the medical community on campuses, on higher education across the board, have really stepped up to the plate on this and put themselves at risk. And, along the lines of putting oneself at risk, you've been instrumental in taking some of this PPE and delivering it out amongst the greater medical community in Massachusetts. Tell our viewers a little bit about what that's been like, and we're going to show some images here while that happens.
So some of the hospitals that I started reaching out to were Cooley Dickinson and Mercy, and other people who reached out to Bay State and UMass Medical. One of the best parts about getting, when the shields were made in Southbridge by a company called K&K Thermoplastics, and I went to pick them up, and as I walked in, I hear a Dr. Rouzier, and this young blonde woman hop up and run over to me, and she's a UMass grad, and she is the daughter of the owner of the company.
Wow.
So her dad owns this company, which is fabricating these for us and making, as opposed to price gouging, they're making these shields, which, you look at a shield on wherever you try to get them now, they're maybe over $5. And these are 44 cents. Mm-hmm. And through grant, UMass basically have given out the first 80,000 to local communities. So I've done a delivery to Mercy and a delivery to Cooley Dickinson, and then deliveries to various nursing homes and to various home health agencies, who are just couldn't be more thankful. I mean, there was an extended care facility in Amherst that was calling around because they had nothing. And I had a handful of the original prototype shields, and I'd ridden my bike to work, and I kind of rolled them up and, rode the shields over to them on my way home. And they couldn't have been happier.
Well, Dr. Rouzier, you're an inspiration to all of us, and we're glad to have you on our team. I want to end this with a key takeaway, and then a little bit of the fun aspect to it as well, because we know you've been to a lot of our games. So number one, what are just some key, maybe even beyond the social distancing or being diligent in hand washing, are there any other key pointers or anything like that in terms of health and safety tips that you want our audience to be aware of?
I think the most important thing, if you're young, you are probably not going to get seriously ill. So please do not take that cavalierly, like I'm going to be okay, because you could kill your grandparents,
right,
or the grandparents in your neighborhood. So older people get this much more seriously than younger people. And by trying to flatten the curve, which does not mean we're out of the woods, man, this is going to last a while. Mm-hmm. Flattening the curve just means we're going to be able to give the medical care to people who really need it, who are really sick. And then when it goes down, people are going to get sick again. Right. So try to respect this serious illness and take the advice seriously, because, we're all in it together.
Well, to finish on a high note, I would love to hear, you've seen UMass play in a lot of different venues, a lot of different football fields, basketball facilities, et cetera, et cetera. Wins and losses out of it. What are the sort of three most memorable venues that you've seen a UMass team compete?
Well, I got to tell you, the oldest and the best was Mark Whipple's first year, and we're down in Chattanooga, Chattanooga. We're playing Georgia Southern, and when we win the national championship, and at one point in time, my son Nicholas, who was probably 8 or 9 years old, comes running down with 2 pom-poms in his hand and screaming over the fence, "Dad, Dad, 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 this is so much fun." And then he goes, "I got to get it back up and cheer with everybody." And he runs back up to the section that he's winning. And that's the game that we won 55-43 or something like that. So that was wild and wonderful. I think Final Four in lacrosse in Philadelphia in 2006 or 7. And then last year with hockey. Mm-hmm. There are pictures of both me and Dr. Kobialka that are like looking extremely serious. I think is when we went into overtime in the semifinal game, and it actually made it on TV. So everybody took a snapshot of it and started sending it to me. And then like minutes later, we win, and I'm jumping up and hugging Dr. Kobialka and my son Nicholas, and we made the Jumbotron. That's so awesome. We made both national TV and the Jumbotron within the same minutes, one full of angst and one full of joy.
In that Denver game in the Frozen Four, I mean, I remember just like squatting down with a pit in my stomach going into overtime, or like when we went through those first minutes, with it was so back and forth. It was a great game, but I'm glad I get to share at least one of those memories with you, and hopefully we've got more Chattanooga and men's lacrosse Final Four-esque memories coming down the line. Just a quick aside before we end here. What a speech Todd Bankhead gave at the Hall of Fame induction last fall. What an amazing, amazing journey he had from being discovered and coming to campus and leading us to a national championship. And, all the stars kind of aligned that year in terms of the guys that were on that roster. But
Todd was a junior transfer, but his era, I tell all those kids that we were freshmen together.
Right.
Kaliayi, that class, and Todd was in that class, but as a transfer junior. And I tell them that was my first year. We were freshmen, and now they're my adult friends. And I am one of the luckiest doctors in the world that, not everybody gets to watch their patients show off and then grow up and go from young men and women to, men and women who are adults and become my adult friends.
They're a great group, and we appreciate all those gridiron guys that come back and support us game in and game out. And Dr. Rouzier, we appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for being on the Flagship in Focus today, and thank you so much for what you're doing to better our communities, both locally and regionally here in Massachusetts. So thank you for that.
Thanks for having me. Stay safe.
We will, and we'll see everybody next week on the Flagship in Focus.